This is Idaho Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance, the state capital today in Boise, Idaho, and we are joined by Lawrence Wasden. He is the Attorney General of the great state of Idaho. And as I've told you, I was a lawyer. I guess I'm always a lawyer, but I don't practice anymore. But I'm always fascinated by the work of the top law enforcement official in any state. And I want to get a sense, what do you do as Attorney General of one of our 50 states?
Well, there's really a great misunderstanding about what the Attorney General does.
Right.
I have two basic responsibilities, and that is I provide legal advice to state officers and state boards and commissions. And the other thing that I do is I represent the state in court. That confuses people because they don't often understand that I'm not, in that sense, a policymaker.
Right.
So I was being interviewed on one occasion by a TV reporter who said, well, what do you think about Bill on drinking? And I said, I don't have anything to do with that, because I say whether it's constitutional or not. I give legal information, but I don't choose whether it's good or bad.
But if the legislature came to you and said, we're looking at this bill, would you opine on it?
Absolutely.
You would?
I would if I'm asked.
Asked, right.
I have to be asked under the law, and then the law says once I'm asked, I have to give an answer.
Also, if someone commits a crime, they rob a local liquor store, is your office prosecuting?
No.
No. And that's another misnomer.
A very big misnomer. Under the law in Idaho, that count would be prosecuted by the local county prosecuting attorney. Now, I can step into that case, but only if I'm invited in. I don't have authority to step in and prosecute that case.
Are there any criminal matters that start originally in the Attorney General's office?
We have concurrent jurisdiction in some environmental crimes and some white-collar crimes, but it's concurrent jurisdiction, meaning with the county prosecutor.
Exactly.
We have very limited, probably no original jurisdiction.
One of the areas I know in which you are most proud deals with consumer protection. That is an area that does seem to kind of start within the Attorney General's office. Explain that and the interplay between the state's work with consumer protection and the national's work on consumer protection.
Yeah, this is an area of law which is committed to the hands of the Attorney General by state statute. So I have a responsibility to protect consumers and the marketplace. Folks get kind of, you know, they don't always understand what that means. So what that means is that when a consumer, or large numbers of them, are being abused, then I have a responsibility to step in and to do something about that.
Price gouging.
Price gouging.
Telemarketing.
Telemarketing.
What else?
Yeah, all kinds of scams.
Safety, if there are safety issues with products that we buy.
Correct.
This is probably, arguably, one of the most important things that you do.
That is a very important part of what we do, and it's very public as well. And some folks don't always understand that, for example, like in price gouging, there's a very narrow window in which I have any responsibility. It's not in the wholesale market, it's only in the retail market, and it's only when there is a declared emergency either by the President of the United States or by the governor of the state. That's the only time when I have any authority with regard to price gouging.
Now, as the Attorney General, while I am sure you're an excellent litigator, probably an outstanding appellate lawyer, you're not in court. You have people do that for you.
Exactly. I have a staff who does that. You know, in any one given moment, we'll have 5,000 or 6,000 or maybe 8,000. Yeah, matters in process. It's impossible for me to take all of my energy, apply it to one, and then there's 5,000 or 6,000 that don't have any attention.
But I must ask, if there's a case, let's say, before the Idaho Supreme Court, even the U.S. Supreme Court, have you stepped in?
I have been present when those arguments have been made. I'm fully aware of those cases. I have the power, authority to appear in front of the United States Supreme Court. However, I have an obligation to see that the state's best interest, legal interest, is pursued. That means you need to have an attorney who has the qualifications to be there.
I'm impressed. I mean, a lot of attorney generals would want to kind of jump in and get the limelight shown on them, but no, I mean, you use your career prosecutors and lawyers to do that.
You bet.
A lot of news focused on Mexico. And I'm surprised that I'm asking the Attorney General of Idaho about Mexico, but I was incredibly impressed to read about your involvement in reforming Mexico's judicial system, criminal justice system. If Mexico ever is going to get on its feet again, justice needs to be reformed.
Absolutely, and I guess I came about this because I've twice been the chair of the Conference of Western Attorneys General, and the first time I was chair, I was invited to go to California to meet with a delegation from Mexico, and so I had this great speech on justice, all these high and lofty notions. But as I listened to them, I realized that this wasn't about lofty notions of justice. This was about boots on the ground justice. And so I tossed my speech and I started talking to them about some public corruption cases I'd been involved in and that sort of thing. And when I was done, I had to leave. And so that I was they were rushing me out to the airport. And this woman came out the door and she was crying. And she was speaking very rapidly in Spanish. I had no idea what she was saying. And this crowd gathered around us, and someone began to interpret and said, she's saying, "We need you. We need you." I'm like,
Wow.
What does that mean?
Wow.
She said that she was a reporter for a Mexican publication, that she had been reporting on a child sexual abuse ring which was operating in her city. The governor of her state had ordered the police chief to kidnap her and torture her for 48 hours in order to shut her up. Actually happened. It's an internationally reported story. And I thought, I mean, I was just shocked. I was overcome, overwhelmed. What do I do?
Yeah. What can you do as the Attorney General of a state?
Right. So here's what we did.
Tell me.
I went to Mexico with the director of CWAG. We met with the USAID and other persons in the embassy. The specific person I spoke to happened to be from Oregon, right across the river, 2 boys from Treasure Valley, and sat down and talked about what can we do when we have cooperative agreements with our sister states in Mexico.
So what do you do? Do you offer prosecutors to train in justice?
Exactly,
okay.
Exactly. Under the Mexican system, they operated under what's called a Napoleonic system, which was a written system rife with corruption. Yeah.
Codes, yeah.
But they had amended their constitution several years ago to have an adversarial system more like we have in the United States.
Juries?
No juries. They're done by judges, but adversarial.
I see.
Because under the Napoleonic system, it was an accusatory system where once the accusation was made, then the defendant essentially had the responsibility to prove their innocence.
Right, the burden of proof.
As opposed to an adversarial system where the state has the burden of proving their guilt.
So do you feel as if Mexico is figuring out how to create a justice system that is fair, that isn't rife with corruption? And I don't want to be stereotypical, but that's what it seems.
I will tell you that the officials I spoke to in Mexico, and I've been there many times, were willing to say, yeah, our system is corrupt. One of the members of their Supreme Court, who was their ambassador to the U.S., who was the Attorney General at the time all this started, he and I are good friends. I saw him a year ago. He's saying we are serious about changing the way we prosecute crimes.
I would love for you to come back and talk more about this, because I do think that our neighbors to the south need you, and I want to hear more about what you're doing. His name is Lawrence Wasden. We'll have you back, okay?
Okay, great.
He is the Attorney General of the great state of Idaho. We thank you so much for joining us from Boise, Idaho, Local Edition.